My name is Eleanor Wright, and I spent 34 years as a legal secretary at Henderson and Cole downtown, filing motions and affidavits until my fingers knew the weight of every stapler in that office. I tell you this because I want you to understand that I knew what official paperwork looked like, or at least I thought I did, until the morning my daughter Jenny sat across from me at my kitchen table and handed me a stack of forms that would cost me everything. It was a Tuesday in early March, the kind of morning where frost still clung to the corners of the windows, and the sun came in pale and hesitant through the curtains. I'd made coffee in my old percolator, the one Richard bought me the year before he died, and I was sitting there in my robe, barefoot on the cold linoleum, when Jenny knocked twice and let herself in with her spare key. She looked rushed, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, her coat still buttoned. She carried a manila folder tucked under one arm and a travel mug in the other hand. I could see steam rising from the lid. "Morning, Mom," she said, setting the folder on the table between us. "I know it's early, but I need you to sign these before I head to the county office. They close at noon for renovations, and if we miss today, it's another 2 weeks." I reached for my reading glasses on the counter. "What are they?" "Tax renewal forms. You know how Dad always handled the property taxes? Well, the county switched to a new system, and they need updated signatures on file. It's just a formality, but they're strict about deadlines." I nodded, pulling the folder toward me. Jenny sat down across from me, checking her phone, her knee bouncing under the table. She'd always been like that, moving fast, impatient with slowness. When she was young, I used to tell her she ran through life like she was late for an appointment she'd already missed. The folder held maybe 8 or 9 pages, all printed on heavy cream paper with the county seal at the top. I scanned the first page. It was dense with text, paragraphs of legal language about property assessment and tax liability. My eyes caught phrases like ownership transfer and grantor acknowledges, but the words blurred together in that way legal documents do when you're tired and trust the person handing them to you. "Where do I sign?" I asked. Jenny leaned over and tapped a yellow sticky arrow at the bottom of each page. "Right there, and there, and there. I already filled in the address and parcel number, so you just need your signature." I signed the first page, then the second. The pen was one of those cheap ballpoints that skipped every few letters, and I had to go back over my name twice. Jenny watched me, her fingers drumming on the table. "Mom, I hate to rush you, but I really need to get these filed today." "I'm going as fast as I can, honey." By the time I reached the last page, my hand was cramping. I signed my name one more time, set the pen down, and pushed the folder back across the table. Jenny scooped it up, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're the best. I'll call you later." And then she was gone. I sat there in the quiet, listening to her car start in the driveway, the engine fading down the street. The coffee had gone cold in my cup. I poured it out, rinsed the mug, and went upstairs to get dressed. If you've ever been in a situation where someone you loved made you feel small without meaning to, or maybe meaning to just a little, I'd like to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below and tell me your city. It helps to know these stories travel farther than we think. 3 weeks passed. The frost melted, and the maples started budding. I spent most of my time organizing Richard's old files in the basement, sorting through boxes of receipts and warranties and photographs we'd meant to put in albums, but never did. I found his toolbox, still covered in sawdust from the garden shed he'd built the summer before his stroke. I ran my hand over the handle, felt the grain of the wood, and cried quietly for 10 minutes before putting it back. Jenny called twice during those weeks, both times to ask if I needed anything from the store. I said no. She said she'd stop by soon. She didn't. Then, on a Thursday afternoon, I found the envelope in my mailbox. It was a standard white business envelope with the county recorder's office address printed in the corner. I opened it standing there by the mailbox, the wind pulling at the paper in my hands. Inside was a single page, a recorded document notice. It listed my address, my parcel number, and the date of recording. Under document type, it said quitclaim deed. Under grantor, it said Eleanor Margaret Wright. Under grantee, it said Jennifer Ann Wright. I read it 3 times before my hand started shaking. I walked back into the house, sat down at the kitchen table, and stared at that notice for what felt like an hour. A quitclaim deed. I knew what that was. I'd typed hundreds of them at Henderson and Cole, documents that transferred property from one person to another, often between family members, often during divorces or estate settlements. They didn't require a sale, didn't require money to change hands, just a signature acknowledging that you were giving up your claim to the property, and I had signed one. I pulled out the folder where I kept my own property documents, the ones Richard had organized years ago. The deed was there, yellowed and creased, showing both our names, then just mine after he died. I laid the county notice next to it and compared the parcel numbers. They matched. I sat very still, feeling something cold and sharp settle in my chest. Jenny had taken my house, not stolen it, not exactly, because I had signed the papers, but she'd lied about what they were. I didn't call her. Not yet. I needed to think. That night, I barely slept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the morning in my mind. Jenny rushing me, the stack of forms, the yellow arrows, the way she'd tapped the pages impatiently, her knee bouncing under the table. Had she planned this? Or had it been an impulse, a chance she saw and took? I thought about calling my son, Michael, but Michael lived 4 states away and called me twice a year, on my birthday and Christmas. We weren't close. Jenny had always been the one who stayed nearby, the one who checked in, the one I thought I could rely on. By morning, I'd made a decision. I would go to the county recorder's office myself. I would pull the file. I would see the document with my own eyes. The county recorder's office sat on the 2nd floor of a municipal building downtown, the kind of place with narrow hallways and flickering fluorescent lights and a smell like old paper and floor wax. I'd been there once before, years ago, to file Richard's death certificate. The woman at the front desk was maybe 30, with short auburn hair and a name tag that said Carla. She looked up from her computer as I approached. "Can I help you?" "I need to see a recorded document," I said. "A quitclaim deed filed about 3 weeks ago." "Do you have the parcel number or recording number?" I slid the county notice across the counter. She glanced at it, typed something into her computer, and nodded. "Give me a minute." She disappeared into a back room. I stood there, hands folded over my purse, trying to keep my breathing steady. Around me, other people waited, a young couple holding hands, an older man in a suit flipping through a legal pad. Carla returned with a thin file folder. She opened it on the counter, turned it toward me, and said, "Here you go. You can review it here, but you can't remove it from the building." I opened the folder. The quitclaim deed was right on top, printed on the same cream-colored paper Jenny had brought to my house. I recognized my signature at the bottom, the way the E in Eleanor looped too wide, the way the W in Wright tilted slightly to the left. But above my signature, in bold black letters, was a paragraph I didn't remember reading. "The grantor, Eleanor Margaret Wright, does hereby remise, release, and quitclaim unto the grantee, Jennifer Ann Wright, all right, title, and interest in the property described below." I read it again, then a 3rd time. Carla must have seen something in my face because she leaned forward slightly. Are you okay? I looked up at her. This isn't what I thought I was signing. Her expression softened. What did you think you were signing? Tax renewal forms. My daughter told me they were tax forms. Carla was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can I show you something?" She pointed to a line near the bottom of the deed, just above my signature. See this date? March 7th. That's the date the document was signed. Yes. Now look at this. She flipped to the next page in the file, a notary certificate. This shows the notary's stamp and signature. The date here is also March 7th. I nodded, not understanding yet. But the recording date, Carla continued, pointing to the top of the first page, is March 9th. That means your daughter brought this in 2 days after you signed it. Why does that matter? Because, Carla said gently, if this document was part of a tax filing, it would have been recorded the same day. Tax forms go through a different process. They're not notarized like this, and they're definitely not quitclaim deeds. I stared at her. So she lied. I can't say that for sure, Carla said carefully. But based on what I'm seeing, this was filed as a property transfer, not a tax document. My hands were shaking. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. What can I do? Carla hesitated. That's a legal question. I can give you a copy of the deed, but if you want to challenge it, you'll need to talk to a lawyer. Can I get the copy now? Of course. She made 2 copies, one for me and one for her records, and handed them to me in a plain envelope. I thanked her, walked out of that building, and sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at the envelope in my lap. I thought about calling Jenny right then, demanding answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the part of me that still wanted to believe there was some explanation, some misunderstanding that would make this all make sense. I drove home and put the envelope in the folder with my other property documents. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I Googled how to challenge a quitclaim deed. The laptop sat open on my kitchen table, the screen glowing in the dark. It was past midnight, and I'd been reading for hours, clicking through legal websites and forum posts and articles about property fraud. I learned that quitclaim deeds were legal documents, valid as long as they were signed and notarized. I learned that challenging them was difficult, especially if the signature was genuine. I learned that proving fraud required showing that the signer didn't understand what they were signing, or that they were coerced or deceived. I'd signed willingly. I'd believed Jenny when she said the forms were for taxes. But I hadn't read the deed carefully. I hadn't asked enough questions. Was that my fault or hers? I found a forum post from a woman in Ohio who'd been tricked into signing over her house to her son. She wrote, "He told me it was for refinancing. I trusted him. Now I have nothing." Another post from a man in Florida. "My daughter forged my signature on a deed. The notary never even met me. I'm fighting it in court, but it's been 2 years and I still don't have my house back." I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, listening to the house creak around me. This was Richard's house, the house where we'd raised Jenny and Michael, the house where I'd folded laundry in the basement and cooked Sunday dinners and sat on the porch swing watching fireflies in the summer. And now, legally, it belonged to Jenny. I thought about the years after Richard died, the way Jenny had stayed close, calling me every few days, stopping by with groceries or takeout. I'd thought she was being kind. I'd thought she cared. But now I wondered if she'd been waiting, watching, calculating. How long had she been planning this? I stood up, walked to the sink, and poured myself a glass of water. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window, a tired woman with gray hair and lines around her mouth. someone who looked older than I felt inside. I thought about what Carla had said. You'll need to talk to a lawyer. But lawyers cost money, and I didn't have much of that left after Richard's medical bills and the funeral, and the years of living on his pension and my small Social Security check. Still, I had to do something. I went to bed that night with a plan forming in my mind. I would go back to the county office, I would ask more questions, and I would find out if Jenny had made any mistakes, anything that might give me leverage. Because if there was one thing I'd learned in 34 years as a legal secretary, it was that people who lie usually leave a trail. The next morning, I called the county office and asked to speak to Carla. She picked up on the third ring. Carla, this is Eleanor Wright. I was in yesterday about the quitclaim deed. I remember. How can I help you? I want to know about the notary, the one who signed the deed. There was a pause. What do you want to know? Who they are. Whether they actually witnessed me sign the document. Another pause, longer this time. Mrs. Wright, I can't give out personal information about notaries, but I can tell you that the notary's information is public record. Their name and commission number are on the deed. Can you look it up for me? Hold on. I heard typing. Then Carla came back on the line. The notary's name is Lisa Fernandez. Her commission number is listed as active with the state. She's registered in this county. Does it say where she works? It lists her address as a mobile notary service. She probably does signings at people's homes or offices. My stomach tightened. A mobile notary. That meant Jenny could have arranged for Lisa to come to my house. Or more likely, Jenny had brought the documents to Lisa afterward and claimed I'd signed them in front of her. Is there a way to verify that Lisa actually witnessed my signature? I asked. Carla hesitated. You'd have to contact her directly. But Mrs. Wright, if you're thinking of challenging this deed, you should really talk to a lawyer first. I know. I just need to understand what happened. I get it, Carla said softly. But be careful. This kind of thing can get messy. I thanked her and hung up. That afternoon, I found Lisa Fernandez's phone number online. She ran a small notary business out of her home, offering services for real estate closings, powers of attorney, and affidavits. Her website had a stock photo of a smiling woman holding a clipboard. I called her number. It rang 4 times before someone picked up. This is Lisa. Hi, Lisa. My name is Eleanor Wright. I have a question about a document you notarized. Sure. What's the document? A quitclaim deed. It was filed with the county on March 9th. There was a pause. Okay. What's your question? I want to know if you remember witnessing my signature. I notarize a lot of documents, Mrs. Wright. I don't always remember every person. This would have been around the beginning of March. The deed transferred my house to my daughter, Jennifer Wright. Another pause. Can you hold on a minute? I heard rustling, like she was flipping through papers. Then she came back on the line. I have a record of that notarization. It says I met with you and your daughter at your home on March 7th at 10 in the morning. My chest went cold. That's not true. Excuse me? I never met you. My daughter brought me the documents at my house, but you weren't there. Lisa's voice sharpened. Mrs. Wright, I don't appreciate being accused of fraud. I have clear notes that I was present when you signed that deed. What do your notes say? They say I arrived at your address at 10 o'clock. Your daughter let me in. You signed the deed at the kitchen table. I verified your ID and notarized your signature. I thought about that morning. Jenny had arrived around 9:30. She'd been in a hurry. She'd said the county office closed at noon. If Lisa had been there at 10, I would have seen her. What ID did I show you? I asked. Your driver's license. What name is on my license? Eleanor Margaret Wright. And what's the expiration date? There was a long silence. Then Lisa said, I don't have that information in my notes. Because you never saw my license, I said quietly. You notarized the document without witnessing my signature. My daughter brought it to you after I signed it, and you stamped it anyway. I don't have to listen to this, Lisa said, her voice rising. If you have a problem with the deed, take it up with a lawyer. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, my heart pounding. Lisa had lied. She'd falsified the notarization. That meant the deed might be invalid, but proving it would be another matter. I spent the next 2 days in the basement, going through Richard's old files. He'd been meticulous about keeping records, every utility bill, every repair receipt, every piece of correspondence organized in labeled folders and stored in plastic bins. I found the folder marked Property Documents. Inside was the original deed from when we'd bought the house in 1987, both our names listed as grantors. I found the refinancing paperwork from 1995, the home equity loan from 2003, and the final mortgage payoff letter from 2010. And then I found something else. It was a letter, dated 6 months before Richard died, addressed to me and Richard from a law firm downtown. The letter explained that we'd been added as beneficiaries to a small life insurance policy held by Richard's brother, who'd passed away the previous year. The policy was worth $30,000, and the funds would be distributed to us upon verification of the claim. I didn't remember getting that letter, but I remembered the check arriving a few months later, after Richard's funeral. I'd used it to pay off the remaining medical bills and put the rest into a savings account at the credit union, the account that Jenny had access to. She'd asked me for the account information 2 years ago, saying she wanted to help me manage my finances. I'd trusted her. I'd given her the login information, the account number, everything. I went upstairs and called the credit union. I'd like to check the balance on my savings account, I said. The woman on the phone asked for my account number and some verification questions. Then she said, "Your current balance is $217.43. I closed my eyes. What was the balance 6 months ago? Let me check. There was typing. 6 months ago, the balance was $28,612.91. Where did the money go? There were several large withdrawals over the past few months. Most of them were made online. By who? The system doesn't show that information, but the withdrawals were authorized using your login credentials. I thanked her and hung up. Jenny had taken my money. She'd drained the account, leaving just enough to keep it open, and then she'd taken the house. I sat at the kitchen table, the phone in my hand, and felt something harden inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder, something sharper. I'd spent my whole life being kind, being patient, being the person who gave, and never asked for anything back. I'd raised my children, supported my husband, worked my job, and never once complained. And this was what I got. I picked up the phone and called Jenny. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mom, what's up?" "I need to talk to you," I said. "Can you come over?" "Now? I'm kind of busy." "It's important." She sighed. "Okay, give me an hour." She arrived an hour and 20 minutes later, looking annoyed. She dropped her purse on the counter and said, "What's so important?" I slid the quitclaim deed across the table. "I need you to explain this." She glanced at it, then back at me. Her expression didn't change. "What about it?" "You told me these were tax forms." "They are." "No, Jenny. This is a quitclaim deed. It transferred my house to you." She shrugged. "It's the same thing. The county needed updated ownership information for the property taxes. I just simplified the process." "By taking my house?" "Mom, you're being dramatic. The house is still yours. I'm just helping you manage it." "You lied to me." "I didn't lie. I explained what the forms were for. You said they were tax renewals. They are. The county assesses taxes based on ownership. Now the ownership is updated. I stared at her. She was standing there, arms crossed, looking at me like I was a child who didn't understand something simple. Where's my money, Jenny? Her expression flickered, just for a second. What money? The money in my savings account, the $30,000. It's gone. I don't know what you're talking about. You have my login information. You've been making withdrawals. I've been helping you pay bills, Mom. You asked me to. I never asked you to take everything. She stepped back, her face hardening. You know what? I don't have to explain myself to you. You're not capable of managing your own finances anymore. Someone had to step in. I was managing fine. No, you weren't. You're old, Mom. You're confused. You signed those papers because you knew deep down that you needed help. I stood up, my hands flat on the table. Get out. Excuse me? Get out of my house. She laughed. It's not your house anymore, Mom. It's mine. She grabbed her purse and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I stood there in the silence, my heart pounding, and made a decision. I was going to fight. I found a lawyer through the legal aid clinic downtown. Her name was Margaret Torres, and she specialized in elder abuse cases. She agreed to meet with me for a free consultation. Her office was small, just 2 rooms above a dry cleaner on 4th Street. The waiting area had 4 plastic chairs and a water cooler. Margaret's office was barely bigger, with a desk covered in files and a window that looked out onto the alley. She was maybe 50, with short gray hair and sharp brown eyes. She shook my hand and gestured for me to sit. Tell me what happened. I told her everything. The forms Jenny brought, the quitclaim deed, the notary who'd lied, the drained savings account. Margaret took notes, her expression neutral. When I finished, she set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. This is textbook financial exploitation, she said. Your daughter deceived you into signing a legal document, and she used her access to your finances to drain your account. Both of those actions could be criminal. What can I do? First, we need to challenge the deed. The fact that the notary falsified the witnessing gives us grounds to argue that the notarization was invalid. If we can prove that, the deed could be voided. How do we prove it? We'll need to show that you didn't understand what you were signing and that the notary wasn't present. Your testimony will be key. We'll also need to track down the notary and get her to admit, on record, that she didn't witness your signature. She won't admit that. She might, if she thinks she'll face criminal charges for notary fraud. Margaret opened a file and pulled out a form. I'm going to file a motion to set aside the deed. It'll take a few weeks to get a hearing, but in the meantime, I'll send a letter to your daughter informing her that we're challenging the transfer. What about the money? That's harder. If she spent it, there's no guarantee you'll get it back. But we can file a separate claim for financial exploitation and ask for restitution. If she has assets, we might be able to recover some of it. How long will this take? Margaret looked at me with something like sympathy. Months, at least. Maybe longer. But Mrs. Wright, you're doing the right thing. A lot of people in your situation just give up. I left her office with a folder full of forms and a sinking feeling in my stomach. This was going to be a long fight, but I wasn't giving up. Not yet. The hearing was scheduled for late April, 6 weeks after I met with Margaret. In that time, Jenny stopped calling. She didn't come by. She didn't respond to the letter Margaret sent. I spent those weeks preparing, going over the timeline with Margaret, practicing my testimony, gathering every document I could find. I also filed a police report for the missing money, though the officer who took my statement said financial cases like this were hard to prosecute. The hearing took place in a small courtroom on the third floor of the county courthouse. The room was paneled in dark wood, with rows of benches and a high judge's bench at the front. Margaret sat beside me at a table on the left. Jenny sat at a table on the right with her own lawyer, a man in a gray suit who looked bored. The judge was a woman in her 60s with short silver hair and half-moon glasses. She looked over the file, then up at Margaret. "Counselor, this is your motion. Proceed." Margaret stood. "Your Honor, we're asking the court to set aside a quitclaim deed that was executed under false pretenses. My client, Mrs. Eleanor Wright, was told by her daughter that she was signing tax renewal forms. Instead, she signed a deed transferring her home to her daughter. Additionally, the notary who witnessed the deed has admitted, in a recorded phone call, that she did not actually witness Mrs. Wright's signature." The judge looked at Jenny's lawyer. "What's your response?" He stood, adjusting his tie. "Your Honor, Mrs. Wright signed the deed willingly. The notary's certificate is valid. My client has done nothing wrong." "Do you have proof that the notary was present?" "The notary's stamp is on the document. That's proof enough." Margaret stepped in. "Your Honor, we have phone records showing that Mrs. Wright called the notary and confronted her about the false witnessing. The notary hung up on her rather than defend her actions." The judge made a note. "I'll need to hear from Mrs. Wright herself. Mrs. Wright, please take the stand." I walked to the witness stand, my legs shaky, and placed my hand on the Bible. The clerk swore me in, and I sat down. Margaret approached. "Mrs. Wright, can you describe what happened on March 7th? I took a breath and told my story. Jenny arriving at my house, the stack of forms, the yellow arrows, my signature on each page. "Did you know you were signing a quitclaim deed?" Margaret asked. "No. I thought I was signing tax forms." "Did anyone explain to you what a quitclaim deed was?" "No." "Did you see the notary, Lisa Fernandez, at any point that morning?" "No. I never met her." Jenny's lawyer stood for cross-examination. "Mrs. Wright, you signed the deed, correct?" "Yes." "And that's your signature on the document?" "Yes." "So you willingly put your name on a legal document without reading it?" I hesitated. I trusted my daughter. "That's not an answer. Did you read the document before signing it?" "I read parts of it." "But not all of it?" "No." "And yet you signed it anyway?" "Yes." He smiled. No further questions. I stepped down, feeling like I'd failed. But Margaret squeezed my hand as I sat beside her. The judge looked at both lawyers. "I'll take this under advisement and issue a ruling in 2 weeks. Court is adjourned." The ruling came in the mail on a Thursday afternoon. I opened the envelope standing in the hallway, my hands shaking. The judge had voided the deed. She'd found that the notarization was invalid because Lisa Fernandez had not witnessed my signature. Without a valid notarization, the deed could not stand. The house was mine again. I sat down on the floor, the letter in my lap, and cried. Not from relief, exactly. From exhaustion. From the weight of 6 weeks of fighting and worrying and wondering if I'd lose everything. Margaret called an hour later. "Did you get the ruling?" "Yes." "Congratulations, Mrs. Wright. You won." "What happens now?" "We file the ruling with the county, and the deed will be removed from the record. The house will go back to being in your name only." "What about Jenny?" Margaret paused. "That's up to you. You could press charges for fraud, or you could let it go." I thought about that. I don't know if I can forgive her. You don't have to decide right now. Just know that you have options. After we hung up, I walked through the house, room by room, touching the walls, the counters, the windowsills. This was still my home. It had always been my home, but it felt different now. Quieter, emptier. I thought about calling Jenny, telling her I'd won. But what would be the point? She knew what she'd done. A week later, I sat down at the kitchen table and wrote Jenny a letter. I didn't mail it. I just needed to write it, to put the words on paper, to see if they made sense. Dear Jenny, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you'll ever want to. The judge voided the deed. The house is mine again. You must know that by now. I spent a long time trying to understand why you did what you did. Was it the money? Was it greed? Or was it something else? Something I can't see because I'm too close to it. I raised you to be honest, to be kind, to treat people with respect. I don't know where I went wrong, but I do know this. You broke something between us that I don't think can be fixed. Not because I can't forgive you, but because you haven't asked for forgiveness. You haven't admitted what you did. You haven't even said you're sorry. And maybe that's the hardest part. Not the betrayal itself, but the silence that followed. I hope someday you understand what you cost me. Not just the house or the money, but the trust, the belief that my daughter would never hurt me. I don't know if we'll ever speak again. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. But I wanted you to know that I'm still here, still standing, still me. And that's enough. Mom. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Maybe I'd send it someday. Maybe I wouldn't. For now, it was enough to have written it. Spring turned to summer. The maples leafed out, thick and green, shading the front yard. I planted tomatoes and peppers in the back, worked the soil with my hands, felt the dirt under my nails. Michael called one afternoon, out of the blue. Mom, I heard what happened. With Jenny. Who told you? Jenny did. She called me last week. She was upset. About what? She said you accused her of stealing from you, that you took her to court. I was quiet. Mom? She did steal from me, Michael. She tricked me into signing over the house and she drained my savings account. She said it was a misunderstanding. It wasn't. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, I'm sorry, Mom. I should have been there. It's okay. No, it's not. I should have been paying more attention. It's done now. Do you need anything? No, I'm fine. And I was. Not happy exactly. Not the way I'd been before. But fine. I spent the summer gardening and reading and sitting on the porch in the evenings, watching the fireflies blink in the dusk. I thought about Richard sometimes, about the life we'd built, the years we'd spent together. I thought about Jenny, about the little girl she'd been, the woman she'd become. And I thought about myself, about who I was now in this quiet house, with these empty rooms and this garden that kept growing whether I tended it or not. Jenny called in September on a Tuesday afternoon. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mom? Yes. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't respond. I know you probably don't believe me, but I am. I was desperate. I needed money, and I thought you wouldn't miss it. I thought the house would just sit there, and you'd be okay living somewhere smaller, and I could sell it and we'd all be better off. You thought wrong. I know. You didn't just take the house, Jenny. You took my trust. I know. And I don't know if I can give that back to you. She was crying now. I don't expect you to. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, that I know what I did was wrong. Okay. Can I see you sometime? I thought about that. I don't know. Maybe, someday. Jenny's voice lingered in my ear long after I hung up. I sat there with the phone still warm in my hand, watching dust dance in a shaft of afternoon light that fell across the kitchen floor. The words "I'm sorry" should have felt like a door cracking open. Instead, they felt like a ghost passing through, something you could sense but never hold. For days after that call, I kept replaying it. Her voice had sounded younger somehow, like the girl who used to sit at this same table coloring outside the lines, asking if she'd done a good job. Maybe it was the crying that brought that image back. Maybe it was me, still wanting to see something good left in her. I didn't call her back. Not right away. Instead, I went on living. I joined a morning walking group at the park, bought a secondhand camera, and started taking pictures of the garden coming alive again. Sunlight on tomato leaves, bees heavy with pollen, the way dew gathered like pearls on the grass. I sent a few to Michael, who texted back, "You're getting good, Mom." Some evenings, I'd pull the letter I'd written to Jenny from the drawer, read it again, then fold it carefully and slide it back. I'd written it to let the pain drain out, and in some strange way, it had worked. I could breathe again. One Saturday, I went downtown to the farmer's market. As I passed the flower stall, I saw Carla, the clerk from the recorder's office, arranging tulips in a bucket. She recognized me first. "Mrs. Wright, how are you?" I smiled. "Better, much better. I'm glad. I think about you sometimes. That case, it stuck with me." "Me too," I said, and I meant it. She handed me a small bunch of daisies. "On the house, you deserve something bright." Walking back to the car, daisies in hand, I felt the first real lift in my chest in months. Maybe forgiveness didn't always come from a talk or an apology. Maybe it began in small kindnesses from strangers who believed your story. A week later, I received a letter from Margaret, my lawyer. Inside was a check, $6,200. The notary, Lisa Fernandez, had agreed to a settlement after the county opened an investigation into her falsified witnessing. Margaret had negotiated that the payment go directly to me for distress and damages. I laughed when I saw the amount. It wasn't much compared to what I'd lost, but it felt symbolic, like the world was giving back a small corner of what had been taken. I deposited it the next day and used part of it to fix the roof shingles Richard had meant to replace before his stroke. The rest I tucked into a new savings account under my name only, with no shared access this time. Weeks passed. The air cooled. Leaves turned gold. I thought about inviting Michael for Thanksgiving, maybe even Jenny, but the thought of them sitting across from each other, her eyes avoiding mine, felt too raw. So I spent the holiday with the neighbors next door, the Dawsons, who insisted I bring my famous cranberry bread. That night, walking back to my porch with a container of leftovers, I noticed something on the doormat. A white envelope. No return address. Inside was a cashier's check for $20,000 and a short note in Jenny's handwriting. For what I took. I can't undo it, but I can start paying it back. I hope someday you'll let me try again. Jay. I sat down on the porch steps, the cool air brushing my face. For a long time, I just stared at that check. It wasn't the money that moved me. It was the proof of remorse, the kind that required effort and humility. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about Richard, what he'd say if he were here. He was always the peacemaker, the one who believed people could find their way back to each other if they just stayed patient long enough. The next morning, I called Margaret to ask what to do. She said, "It's your choice, Mrs. Wright. You can accept it or return it. But if you accept it, maybe do it for your own peace, not hers." I took her advice. I deposited the check, not as forgiveness, but as acknowledgement that some part of Jenny still understood what she'd done. 2 weeks later, Jenny showed up at my door. I saw her car through the window before she even knocked. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home, but then I saw her standing there on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, looking smaller than I remembered. When I opened the door, she didn't step inside. She just said, "I didn't think you'd answer." I almost didn't. She nodded, eyes red. "I've been in therapy. They said I should face what I did. I don't expect anything, Mom. I just wanted to see you, to say sorry in person." There was something different about her, less defensive, more worn. Her voice trembled, not from guilt this time, but from shame. I stepped aside. "Come in." She hesitated, then crossed the threshold. She looked around the kitchen at the same table where it had all started. "You kept it the same. I like things where they are." We sat. The silence stretched. Then she said quietly, "I thought I was helping. At first. But then it became about me, not you. I was scared, Mom. After Mark left and the bills piled up, I panicked. I told myself I'd fix it before you found out, but it snowballed. And by the time I realized what I'd done, I didn't know how to undo it." I didn't interrupt. I let her talk. Every word sounded like a confession scraped raw. Finally, I said, "You hurt me more than you'll ever understand. I know. And you didn't just take a house. You took safety. The feeling that my own child wouldn't turn against me." Tears slid down her cheeks. I hate myself for that every day. For a long while, we just sat there. The clock ticked on the wall. Outside, a wind chime rang faintly. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said at last, "but I can try." She nodded. "That's all I can ask." She left soon after, promising to keep her distance until I was ready. And though I didn't hug her, I watched her car disappear down the street with a strange mix of sorrow and relief. In the months that followed, Jenny sent cards. Not long letters, just small notes. "Thinking of you. Happy birthday. The tulips are blooming again." She didn't ask for anything, and she didn't come uninvited. Slowly, her words stopped feeling like intrusions and started feeling like attempts. By spring, I found myself replying. A postcard here, a short phone call there. We didn't talk about the past. Not yet. But there was space now, room for something cautious and tender to grow. Sometimes I think healing doesn't look like what people imagine. It's not standing in the sunlight saying, "It's over." It's sitting at the same old table with the same scars, realizing the world hasn't ended. And maybe, just maybe, you still have time to love again, differently this time. That June, I hosted a small dinner. Michael flew in. Jenny came too, bringing a store-bought pie and a quiet nervousness that softened as the evening went on. We didn't toast or talk about forgiveness. We just ate, laughed awkwardly, and watched fireflies blink in the yard. As the sky turned purple and the first stars appeared, I thought of Richard again. His favorite saying when things went wrong, "The truth has its own clock, Ellie. It always shows up on time." He was right. Because sitting there, surrounded by the broken pieces that had somehow begun fitting together again, I realized that truth hadn't come too late after all. It had arrived exactly when I was strong enough to face it, and still soft enough to let it stay.